All right. Beth Martens. I don't have a show, but you were gracious enough to have me on yours last time, the Hero's Journey podcast. I did get to read your book the last time we talked. I didn't have your book. You were gracious enough to send it to me. And I've read it, and it's actually amazing. It's very few times you read a book where you can use it and apply it immediately. You know what I mean? I have very few books that I go back to. And I didn't really, I had the gist of it, but I didn't understand what your work was about totally last time. Now I do. So I think it's going to be great. So today I think what we're going to do is talk about your work, talk about these archetypes. And then I think we're going to stick to one of them, because would you say most truthers or the kind of people who might be watching us are probably the rebel archetype? Would you think that?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, by the way, for this.
Welcome.
Yeah. I loved interviewing you and got such great feedback, and looking forward to this conversation. And absolutely, yes, the rebel archetype is kind of like shooting fish in a barrel in the truth and freedom movement.
Yeah. So let's start. So it's my understanding there are 8 of these archetypes. Where did you learn this? Is this from Carl Jung in school? Where does this come from?
So most of my studies have been either, early in my my university days and studying anthropology and cross-cultural psychology and consciousness and transformation. And so I did come across the work of Carl Jung. I learned about archetypes, but like you said, there was nothing to apply at that stage. It was really just a recognition. And so that's almost as far as I've gone with Carl Jung. And kind of true to my rebel spirit, I try not to go and just study and memorize other people's work. I want to find it here so that it's actually true for me and I have a lived experience of it. And I have suffered the rebel archetype my whole entire life, less and less as I go, but still, I'll share one quick story about a border incident that got me, straight again as a rebel, not so drunk on the rebel anymore. And so those studies led me to more internal studies, because in 1999, as I think you know already, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 lymphoma, and it was largely due to the shadows of the rebel archetype. So once I saw that, after 3 years of fighting for my life and facing death and going through all kinds of horrendous experiences, I was able to see how much of my life force was drained because of these archetype shadows. And once I was able to even just see, in the seeing of them, so much releasing happened, enough releasing happened that there was an energy shift in my body, and that, diagnosis was very quickly, not the diagnosis was healed, but the sickness that I was experiencing very quickly left. I say almost overnight, to a point where my doctor couldn't believe it, didn't even want to connect with it. He was actually totally dissociated when I told him, like, hey, it's me, I survived. He's like, yeah, whatever.
I love that in the book where you run into your oncologist a few years later, random, and you're like, it's me, Beth, I'm alive. And he's like, just blew you off, right? Because he gave you a death sentence pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah, he said I would not survive.
Yeah, well, see, and I like that too. It's the kind of book you put really a lot of personal past experiences in there. I think it's good when a woman writes a book, because they do that. Like, this would sound like a Jung textbook if a man tried to write this book. I think, I was like, holy shit, I couldn't believe you gave so much of your past away. But yeah, so let's maybe, I think what we should do, actually, because when you and I spoke last time, I went on your website, which is bethmartens.com. And then if you scroll down, it doesn't take long. I think it took me 3-4 minutes. You can say, take the questionnaire to find out which of these 8 archetypes you are. I thought I was going to get the alchemist, and I got the rebel. And then it'll say that it'll subscribe you to your newsletter, but if they don't want to, they can unsubscribe, right? So it might be fun, since this is pre-recorded. If you're watching this, you might want to pause real quick, go over to bethmartens.com, scroll down, take the quiz, and find out which you are, because it would be interesting. And then tell us in the comment section. I'd like to see how many rebels are in there. Do you still think of yourself as a rebel archetype, or do you think you've moved on to another phase?
Well, here I'll tell you how the journey works, the hero's journey as an archetype itself. But if you don't mind, I'll address having shared so much personal information in the book. And I'm currently working on my audiobook. I'm nearly finished my parts to send off to the guy who's going to master it. And so I wrote the book and I did a lot of editing of the book. And then there was a second edit of the book. And then I spoke the book out loud for 8 3/4 hours, every single word of it. And then when it came to editing for spacing, all of a sudden I started going like, oh my God, I can't believe I shared this with everybody. There was this it was insane how long that took to feel uncomfortable about. And I got a huge workout in this, just getting these reflections, and my shit really, excuse me, my language really came up when I was doing that.
You can swear. This is Spacebusters.
Okay, there you go. And so at the end of the day, I actually don't regret sharing, and I do have a little bit of a policy in that I only share things that I've already overcome, at least enough to a point where I feel like there's something to give back to people, not just sharing oh, I'm wounded and my heart's open and can you bleed with me or anything like that. So I always get the feedback from people that they found it of value, that they could see themselves inside of it. And it creates connection. So, when people come to me and they've read my book or maybe watched some of my videos or something like that, they always feel like they know me. And that's a beautiful place to start, because otherwise relationships can be really difficult. Now, you're right about the quiz, that if someone goes to my website, just on the homepage, you scroll down, there's a form, it says sign up with your email. And it brings the quiz to you. In 10 minutes, you can learn where you are on the hero's journey, where you are on the path of purpose. But in essence, you're actually in all places. So since you thought you were going to get the alchemist, that's probably very close to you, right? You're also able to recognize patterns inside yourself. I'm not the authority on that. I just know how to ask good questions. And so what it does is it's like a short form for a very complex situation that is, now I narrowed it down to 8 archetypes, and chances are there's way more. But because it's such a complicated subject and it takes a lot of time for people to sort that out, and most people don't have time. They're tied up being a slave one way or another, maybe like you in something that you choose to do, and myself as well. But this is a way to narrow down, especially for the people in my world that tend not to love the government. They tend not to bow down when someone tells them what to do, especially put poison in their arm. And they question things, and they have actually what's more masculine energy. Even if you're a woman, that it takes more masculine energy to stand up for yourself. And so these archetypes are directly, in my experience, for those people. And yeah, so you're all everything at one time, but the quiz gives you a focus because it shows you where you might be defaulting either into the shadows or the gifts, and usually both. And then it positions you in a certain place. So you know what's come before you, what maybe didn't get cleaned up on the way to the rebel, for example, and it shows you what's in front of you. So with the rebel archetype, you've got the child that came first, who was lost in denial, was afraid to be betrayed, was afraid not to survive, and would rather run and hide. And then, when they get their courage and they decide, okay, it's more important for me to speak my truth or whatever that is, they come out of denial and they come out of it fighting like the rebel does. Right. And then what's ahead of that rebel archetype when they solve the big shadow is being a rebel without a purpose. That it's just a habitual kind of fighting for all kinds of reasons that aren't good reasons, they're empty reasons. And then it teaches you how to be more of a warrior who knows how not to fight.
I think I'm going into that phase now. We'll get into what these, we're going to focus on the rebel today.
Yeah.
I can see, and I can also see quite a lot of many of the other 7 in myself. I still do things from the child archetype. Like, when I read the other one, I'm like, yep, that's me. That's me. For me, the rebel archetype, I find that I did, 10 years ago, I found the dark, which I like about the book. So you point out, here's the shadow side. This is what sucks about being in this archetype. And here's what's good about it. I find I was afflicted and suffering from all the shadows 10 years ago when I first started being like a rebel. Although I've been acting like a rebel since school as a young kid. I was like you too. I've been in way more trouble than you have in your book when I was younger, but I'm not telling everyone about mine. But I notice in my current life, since I started doing something about it, I see not any of that dark side of that archetype anymore for me. I see it all the light side. And I also can see the warrior, the next one, which we won't talk about, but where you should be looking out for your future and doing things, I still haven't crossed into that. And I can see I'm supposed to go there and that I'm not doing it. So I can still see that I'm maybe not evolving where I should into that next archetype, which is fascinating. That's why I think this book is great for me, is you can go, oh God, I can recognize myself in this. It's not foreign. When you read this book, it's not foreign. You go, that's me, that's me, that's me. Shit, is that what I'm doing? And then you can see like, what can you do? And then if people can't, so you're coaching, right, to help people. Yeah. What do they do if they want to work with you?
Well, I always start with a conversation with them. Just going back to something you said also about the side that's good and the side that sucks, and the reason that there's a good side and a sucky side is that it's a matter of awareness. That to the degree you you see yourself and you see the nature of the rebel as a kind of hard wiring, which I feel that archetypes are like a hard drive, not a software. And then so from, for the 10 years since you've seen more of the shadows of the rebel, you have awakened yourself to that energy and you become more responsible to it. Because otherwise, when it's in the unconscious, and that's what was happening to me when I was dying of cancer, is that, those archetypes, they don't just go away and slink into the corner or disappear because you reject them. And that's what I was doing. They actually get stronger, but stronger in all of their shadows. And so, yeah, that's where that feeling of the light and the dark. And when I say dark, I'm not necessarily talking about evil. That's a whole big subject unto itself. But it is that where you simply haven't seen it. You haven't been born to it. You haven't brought consciousness to that matter yet.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, finish.
And it's like night and day.
I like in the book, maybe you can talk about that. So you were this rebel archetype. You were doing all this shit when you were younger and getting into trouble. You were a free spirit, we used to call it. Non-authoritarian. But then what happened was you did try to toe the line, so in your story, you suppressed this natural urge. I'll just call it a natural being or urge. And you tried to be like a normie, right? And that's when all the problems happened. Is that not? You tried to pretend that, I can maybe I should fit in at my parents' company and, be a normie, right? Can you talk about that experience and why did that do you think that made you sick?
Yes. And so I was a rebel without a cause for most of my life, right? From the get-go, my first word was no. I didn't just go along to get along. I was, people started to learn to just be uncomfortable because I was there and didn't even say anything or do anything. They're just like, oh, Beth, oh no. And so I got into so much trouble with it that, and like I write about in the book, I just ended up with all the wrong friends and I was a teenage runaway and all kinds of, spent a night in jail. And so I had decided like, oh, this is getting me in trouble. This is ruining my life. It's ruining my relationships, especially with family. And so, yeah, I thought, oh, I should just be normal now. Like I had a sign as a child that said, why be normal? I picked that out of, like all of the different things that those sayings in the little stores and stuff. And so, yeah, I decided I was going to pull out this normal side, and I was studying it and looking at it in other people because it's not me. So I had to emulate it. Oh, they go to work, they, help their family, they dress normal, they make money, they're responsible, all of those kind of things. And those are actually not all bad qualities by any means, but it's like you said, because I always feel it like I took my foot and I put it on the head of the rebel and I just said, you're out of here. We're done. I'm breaking up with you forever. Don't come back. You're not welcome. And what ends up happening is in that resistance, you're actually investing a great deal of energy in the shadow. You're feeding the shadow by trying to get rid of the shadow. And this is the big inversion that I, as a coach, am very committed to teaching, but also showing people the way, because teaching only goes so far, right? You can hear a lot of information on these subjects, but until you apply it and you go inside and you have the revelation, like, wow, that's a dynamic happening inside me energetically. It is resulting in certain kinds of behavior. It's playing out. The relationships all reflect it, but it's right here. So as a coach, I help people to have that revelation, to simply see what they haven't seen, and to begin removing the layers of programming that hold the shadow in place. There are core root programs that they threaten our life. They threaten that we can't have love and approval from other people. They threaten that we can't be in control, which is a big lie, by the way. I'm a totally anti let go of control person. It's not like that. It's not a desirable outcome. You're in control. You can please act like it. And even our basic connection with other people, it's all threatened from the unconscious, which is why you tend to hold on to the shadow, because it seems to be a source of safety and all of those things I talked about, which again, it's a big inversion. It's a big lie. And if someone wants to explore that, if they say, hear this and they know they're struggling in certain ways with the rebel archetype or any other one that they get on the quiz, then you can just put up your hand at my website on a contact form. Let me know you'd like to chat about it. I'll always talk with somebody before working with them to see if it's actually a good fit between us and can they make use of this work, because not everybody can yet. I mean, I think everybody can in potential, but, people have different levels of willingness to look at the unseen. And then here's the bottom line of it, to feel the pain of what you didn't see. And that's why I think the Buddha said, it's all pain. And it is juxtaposed. Now, it's not about going and being on fire with pain and that's it, and it's just always going to be pain. It's to recognize that pain contains your freedom. In fact, it's identical with your freedom. And once you become aware of it, you shine the light of your awareness on it, it can, now talking to an alchemist, it can transpose or transform into the true power that it is, or it's more like you see it for what it actually is and can receive it and not suppress it.
Yeah, I like it's one of my. You have some great quotes in your book. On every page, you have like a thing highlighted. On page 6, this one tripped me out. You said a buffalo instinctively knows to run into a storm because that's the fastest way through it, which is exactly what you're saying. It's like you need to know that this shit is holding you back, and then you deal with it. Exactly. I thought that was brilliant. So before we go to the rebel, let's just talk through. Can you talk people through the 8 archetypes? And I liked on, I think it was like page 320. You gave sort of an example of somebody going through them all from child to the end. But can we just name them? Like, so child would be. Are they in this order necessarily, or is it? Yes. So child is the first one.
Yeah, exactly. The order was a revelation on the heels of my mom's passing, because I already had what I called archetype soup. And then I thought they were just free floating archetypes, but it turned out that they were a meaningful journey that went in a specific order. And I found that order inside myself and proceeded to test that on a whole bunch of people. And I ran courses on it, and it was bona fide. I was amazed. And to this day, I'm always tickled pink when I see how something is just naturally evolving through that order. And so the order itself is a beautiful thing. Otherwise, it feels like chaos. It feels like you're just dealing with everything random, going in every direction, and anything can happen anytime. But once you start to tap into the order that's naturally there, that's been installed as far as I'm concerned, then you've got your bearings. Then you know up from down and back from front, and you have a focused place that you can begin to do the work.
You've also got a map like where you are and where you're going, right? So if you're, there's no point jumping to 1-6 down the line if you're not even at number 2 yet. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, all right, put your attention here, right? So it goes child, then rebel. I don't want to talk about all of them because, of course, people should read your book. So we don't want to give away the damn plot here.
And there's a lot. So yeah,
there's a lot. Yeah, it's a big book. It's pretty big, but it's great. So it goes child, rebel, which we'll talk about today. Are you still a rebel?
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can't lose it.
Yeah.
By awakening an archetype, it doesn't go away either.
Right. Then comes the warrior.
Yeah.
Then the nurturer, then the lover, the hedonist, I don't have my glasses, the king, and then finally the alchemist.
Exactly.
But the joke is then it goes back around again, right? Or
That's the joke. That's the joke, Steve. You got the joke. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's really funny because, I think, I've been a fan of ascension myth busting. And that idea that spiritually or even practically in our lives, we can rise and, rise some more and become so elevated that we get enlightened and then we're perfect or whatever they think paradise is going to happen in that context. But what I notice is that nature is built on spirals. If you go back to the Fibonacci sequence and how it's just every single flower in the spring now is coming out Fibonacci. And so life spirals. And I discovered that was the nature of the archetypes as you travel through the journey, that it's going through these stages. And every time you get to the top, you're at the bottom again, but it's the next level. It could be the next level up of the bottom. And it is infinite in both directions. So as soon as you have accomplished in the alchemist and returned, this is the punchline of the hero's journey, that returned with the elixir, bring it to other people so other people could be served by the challenges you've overcome in your life. Then you're going to be hit with this, oh my gosh, I feel lost. I'm at the beginning again. I haven't done anything in my life. I'm just feels like I'm a child again, like I don't know anything. And so it keeps us humble. And it keeps the playing field level, so you never really get ahead of people who haven't journeyed as much as you do. You both have the same amount of work to go through all of those doors to actual freedom.
You know what I love is so much of this just syncretizes with both tropical astrology and I sent you your Mayan astrology.
Right.
It's the same stuff. Like, I'm a Virgo, but you have these all other planets in your chart. I kind of liken them each, you're not just the sun in Virgo. You're also got, where's the moon? Where's, Mars? Two Virgos born 2 days apart could be completely different, but yet they still have the same Virgo archetype, and so like I sent you my Mayan astrology is like dead on with the rebel, syncretizing with the rebel archetype. And I sent you yours. How close was that? I don't know. We could read them to people if you want, but it's just amazing how damn dead on they syncretize for me.
I was shocked. And to tell you the truth, I'm not a huge fan of receiving readings of anything, but I don't know. I just felt good and friendly with you and trusted you. And, you just sent me some stuff. It was quite right on. And especially when it comes to the complexity of relationships, that's actually helped me a lot because I'm in the process of working through a complex relationship right now. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just right in my Mayan astrology. You're crazy. So yeah, very, very syncretic.
It's quite funny. Yeah, I don't want to dwell on them, but their system was they believe there were 13 tones of energy and 20 intentions. And that every day they have a wheel where one tone clicks in the intention. So they have a 260-day year, not 360 or 365. So every day, like tone 1 would match, the first intention and da 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 da. And their names, their first names, were named after the tone and intention of their birthday when the sun's out. So if they were born like 2 a.m. before sunrise, their name was the day before. They believed they had the day before's energy. But every day they all celebrated the person and the energy of the day. And so when you met someone, you knew their name because they named you that. So you knew exactly who you were dealing with. Your name was XEX. So instead of your pronouns being Z, 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 you can say my noun is XEX.
There you go. My pronouns are they lied.
My pronouns are she. But, imagine a society like that where just by someone's name, you knew who they were, because every day you knew every intention of the 260. So that's pretty cool. You kind of knew who you were dealing with. And mine was dead on too. We won't read them and stuff, but like, I was just shocked, like how this just matches up so well with that. I was like, God, this is perfect.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm not an astrologer. I have lots of people in my life who are, for some reason, astrology is all archetypes. It's not off topic for me, but I'm just staying in my lane with what I have. Another parallel I find really pleasing is that the archetypes are like planets, or heavenly bodies, however you want to describe that on whatever, globe or plane we're on. I tend more towards the plane, just so you know. And so all of those are the influence. So even though you were born under a certain position in a certain time with respect to the sun, if that's the case, you always forever have these other influences. And that's what creates the immense complexity at the level of our souls. And so that's can be very difficult for people. They get a look at that and then they just go like, whoa, that's too much. I can't take that in. And so to me, the work is always about finding a point of focus or a point of entry for you to begin exploring what you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I think also, yeah, exactly. It also helps to just know this exists. It's the same with astrology. If you think it's Mystic Mag and if you've never really looked into it and go, oh my God, this is a science. It's not hoodoo voodoo. It's real. Hello, is it me you're looking for?
I've tried every way sideways to turn that off. It doesn't work. So apologies.
It's very curious too that yours has 8 archetypes and the normal astrology is 7 planets, but that's pretty damn close. But yeah, so do you want to? So we said we'd just pick one and talk about the rebel today.
For sure.
So let's talk about it. Why don't you talk about what is the difference between a rebel and a child or the warrior after it? How about we say, what are the, do you want to start with it? It's like, do you like the good news first or the bad news?
I was just going to ask you that exactly. Yeah.
What do you want? You want to give the shadows or the light side first?
Let's
give the shadows. Yeah, I'm with you.
Right on. See a couple of rebels here. We both wore black.
All right. Yeah. Go on. Tell us what's the problem as a rebel. What do you face?
Yeah, and I'll just preface it by saying that the reason to look at the shadow first is that you're often going to identify the archetype much more easily by the shadow than by the gifts. The gifts blur a lot more between the archetypes. So if I only know the gifts, then there might not be like a clear reading there, but the shadows are usually just signatures. So we'll start with that. And the first one is fighting blindly with no cause or purpose whatsoever. So that expression, the rebel without a cause, is cliche for a reason. And they tend to get very burned out for a different reason than other archetypes would get burned out from unfocused anger. So this is the stage where the tendency is to come up and out of the other spiral, the emotional spiral that I teach about. So it's not an apathetic, it's not experience, it's not a grief experience, it's usually not a fear experience, but it can very well be a lust, anger, and pride experience. And that is fight energy. In the unconscious, it's actually kill energy, which no one wants to really find inside themselves, that they have an inner killer going on. It's amazing we don't kill each other more all day long. And so that anger burns out, any fire turns to ash. It's just a natural kind of a thing. So they'll find themselves in apathy because of that anger. They can definitely get into attacking themselves, especially women. I find women rebels that it's not as acceptable to attack and kill the other. So they turn that fight, kill energy on themselves. Another big one is fighting because they're bored. The rebels want excitement in their life. They really thrive on newness and change. One of the very few archetypes that loves change, right? So you don't mind having a life that's different every day. I prayed for that my life would be different every day. And I thrive on that. And I like moving my furniture, which is a sort of a mundane example, but other people, you can see they hold their furniture exactly the same place throughout the years and can't stand the thought of something new. And so that boredom is such a good thing for people to become aware of, that you're looking for a thrill. It's also the reason that the rebel might not dig in and do the whole job, whatever it is that's in front of them, because inevitably the luster wears off, the excitement wears off, and it becomes nuts and bolts, calling the warrior for that more building out the infrastructure, and they have to get past that shadow.
I fight that one a lot, because when I make these films, they're very long. They take me months sometimes. I get like 2/3 done and I'm like, I just, like the drive is gone and I'm like, come on, dude, just finish it, but I really have to force myself, which is weird. I just want to read this because a part out of my Mayan astrology says that people like me, Amahunsen, we're assertive, self-guided, and give a good push to whatever project we're associated with, but do not expect them to be attentive to details or put the finishing touches on things. In other words, we just get like, I'm bored. Let's move on, So I see a lot of that in myself, totally.
That's good to see. Yeah. And then, you can at some point also solve that with bringing other people into your world that are, more thrive on that, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. In fact, my dad was that exact kind of person. So he ended up with a huge staff to be able to make up the difference. And it is a true way to approach an archetype. You don't have to be everything yourself. You can have other people in your life to play that role, but it's also a really good one to get past and just do the thing and finish it and complete it. Like publishing that book, it was insane to get to the finish line. It was, and even when I was at the finish line, I wasn't even at the finish line yet. It ended up needing a second edit. So yeah, that was a really good workout.
Yeah, you're like, do I have to edit this again? No,
I know. I still, and I'm rebelling against another edit. I'm just going to write a new book and be done with it, so I can satisfy that desire.
I also have the Virgo crap where I don't let other people, and I want to do everything myself. Maybe that's even a rebel thing too. I'm like, no, you're just going to ruin it. I want it done like this, and I have a lot of trouble asking for help.
That's so interesting. I'm gonna let that sink in. Wanting to do everything yourself, and see if that is a rebel shadow or not.
I do great when I've made films with Andy Kaufman and a couple with Mark Bailey. Right. It's great when I leave it to them. I know that it's not my gig. I'm like, you tell me what to fix here. I take orders well when I know that's the deal. But if that's not the deal and someone's like, can I help you with anything? I'm like, no, it's just going to take longer because I'll have to explain to you. I can see I have to get over that. I also go ahead. Yeah, go.
Okay, now I hear the archetype. It's the king. Yeah, that's the predicament of the king, because their world expands and there literally is too much work and there's too many people and too many moving parts. They physically cannot manage it. Like I remember one of the guys I worked with, and he shows up on a call and he says, and I just lost control of my inbox forever. It's over. I cannot do this. And he had to hire somebody in order to just stay in communication with people. So that want to do everything yourself can definitely be a king.
Oh, that's totally me. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my biggest thing. I'm reading 5 books, making a 3-hour movie, and have 200 emails to answer. I'm like, I just can't. And then they're like, just get someone. And I'm like, yeah, but they can't, because the questions being asked are like that stuff I know, But yeah, I should just get someone. so stupid.
Yeah, I've been in this position too, and it's taking inventory of all the things that you want to have creative control over, but what are all the things that they just suck the time and energy right out of you, and you don't feel happy about? So yeah, that's more of a king thing. But back to the rebel, if we're talking about the shadows, um, not wanting to do the work of being valued for your life purpose. That's a big one also, because especially very encouraged in a slave society for us to just go and be a cog in a wheel and fit in and go along to get along. Then, the rebel's boredom is going to argue with that work that it's going to take to be valued for that, which you've obviously had an amazing breakthrough with. And we talked about not channeling anger and then using change like a weapon to actually dodge personal and inner conflict. So just almost like a shell game. It can be changing the subject in a discussion, or suddenly changing how many people run away from a conflict by changing their address, like if I live here, I'm going to keep having these problems. If I don't live here, they'll be solved. And then in reality, what happens is those problems follow them through every new address or every new job or every new anything. So yeah, those are the main shadows.
I see a lot of people. I had it too. I was very angry when I woke up and started finding out what was really going on in the world. And then it's true, I didn't have a productive channel. So I was like taking this out on my wife at the time, like, wake up, can't you see it? And she's like, can't you see you're ruining our house here because you're worried about this? And I'm like, can't you see there won't be a house in 15 years if we don't worry about it? And I didn't have an outlet. Later, I started writing, and then luckily I had Spacebusters where I could start making films and saying, all right, now I'm not trying to wake everyone up. I'm just putting out information saying, come if you want it, don't. So I could see myself. That's one of the ones. There's another one I do where I think it might be the child archetype. So I got more known because of the germ COVID crap, right? So I used to make all kinds of weird stuff about other stuff. All of a sudden I've got all these new followers, and then I'm talking about the earth shape, for instance. And I'm getting attacked. They're like, he's a CIA agent. He comes to talk about this, and now he's talking about that to discredit. So one of the things I do is I purposely, out of all the people I know who are flat earthers, I get Dave Weiss because he's the most agitating of all. And I do it on purpose just to piss them off. I'm like, I'm going to get the guy who's going to rub you. And then when they attack me for having him on, I'm like, I doubled down. I'm like, I'm going to get him again. Which archetype is that?
Well, this is brilliant because one of the powers, the gifts of the rebel archetype is to be polarizing. So a rebel, you generally don't have mediocre feelings for. You either love them or you hate them. I know people hate that word if I use that word, but we all know what we mean. You're either attracted or you have a strong aversion. And it's good to piss people off because it will make them get away. And you want them to choose that themselves rather than to spend all of your time going head to head with the fighters and the haters. You want to just be so clear and authentic about who you are and what you stand for that they're going to go like, ugh, I got to get out of here because I don't want to hear one more word about that. And that becomes such a huge gift because then you'll be surrounded with people who are more in support. And, some people say, oh, you don't want to live in an echo chamber. Yes, you do. You do want to live in an echo chamber because that's when you can thrive. That's when you can, be around your people who see you, who appreciate you, who can encourage you, right? You've already, in the short time we've known each other, you've encouraged me a great deal, Stephen. That's such a great quality. Why would I hang around with someone who looked down on me or couldn't even see? I had one friend for a while. He's like, oh, that's all Chinese to me. He would just say, anytime I'd say something deep or esoteric, oh, that's Chinese to me. And it's like, oh, we can't be friends. You know what I mean? This is stupid.
Yeah, if you don't speak Chinese, how are we going to talk?
Exactly. Are you either going to learn Chinese or? Yeah.
Ciao, ciao. And I have started doing that myself in my comment sections. I used to sit there and waste, like you're talking about, I used to waste hours of my day arguing with people. Most of them are probably like 77th Brigade or robots. They probably aren't even human.
Right.
But Now I just block them if they're being like, I let them say, I don't care if they're saying, but if they're just being abusive and whatever, I just block them. Or they're like, oh, I can't believe I just sat through 2 hours of that. And I'm like, why did you? I didn't force you to do it. Just change the channel. It's not like the old days where there's 3 TV channels. You got the internet with 30 trillion channels. Why did you sit and watch something you didn't want it for 2 hours? How's that my fault? So I have learned that. I'm like, I'm not wasting time with you. Like, get lost. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I don't care.
And that's you starting to graduate to the warrior archetype.
Yeah.
Where you see clearly that there is, a certain amount of time that we're allotted on Earth. I hear that we probably had a lot more time at some point, but with the time that we have, what is going to be useful? That guy says he wasted his time. Then he wasted his time making a comment, right? And entering into that hook. And he could very well be a rebel without a cause too, who doesn't want to work in their own arena. So he comes searching for people that are doing the work and tries to take them down and find fault in that. And it gives the rebel the illusion that they're doing something. And they're not doing anything at all. They're doing less than nothing.
Oh, that is so on, Beth. And that's like what they call control dramas in psychology. People are low on energy. They're like energy vampires. They'll come and attack you because that guy wants me to reply. He's literally like taking my energy because no one else pays attention to that person. And then here I come back who he's, I've got a stalker who's like that. He's making like 10 videos about me. And I'm like, well, clear, because I won't talk about videos about LGBTQ because I'm like, of course, my son has 2 gay godparents. I'm not into all this rainbow shit and drag queens and all that, grooming kids and like, I think it's disgusting.
Yeah.
However, most of the gay community doesn't think it's cool either. So I'm not going to spend my energy attacking the community who's the only one who can't get canceled. You know what I mean? I'm like, to me, there's bigger fish. But this, and then I'm like, why don't you make a movie about LGBT, whatever they're called? Clearly you can make a movie because you made 8 about me. So like, you clearly know how to make a movie. Why do I have to make your movie for you? You twat, like, get lost. And then I learned I used to like, reply to him. Now I just ignore him. I just block him and cancel him. And I don't give the guy my time or day or energy,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can see that. So yeah, so then maybe what do you think? Maybe I'm moving to a new archetype kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, inviting that warrior in, and that ultimately every archetype that follows the other archetype is a kind of cure for the shadows of the one before it. So yeah, the rebel needs to hunker down, to do the work, to explore the boredom, because boredom is really highly programmed and held in place as an experience, a kind of go-to experience. I think lots of us were born into that as children for many reasons. And to see, okay, I'm being called to greater responsibility. I'm being called to greater discipline, greater use of my time and my purpose, and to build out for a future rather than the rebel is very much in the moment and able to respond, which is a good quality and a good gift. But the rebel is going to see, okay, we're in it for the long haul, and what is needed now, brick by brick, building something of substance that will be there and show up for you.
That's pretty interesting because I'm guessing a lot of, like we talked about earlier, a lot of truthers are probably rebels. And what I see a lot of them doing, and I do it myself too, so it's not just me, but them, but they're not doing anything. They're sitting there watching people like me in my videos. Thank you. I'm not bitching. You're watching, they're watching me, you. Suddenly, like, we're the cult of personality of the germ, no germ, and they need the daily play-by-play. And I get this a lot. I get like 100 emails a day. Have you seen this? It's a 2-hour clip. I'm like, I don't even have time to do what I'm doing. I can't sit around and watch 2,000 hours of clips. Tell me what it's even about or where to skip to, and they're doing nothing. They're just sitting there like bitching about the daily play-by-play, which is what you're saying. It's like an undirected anger or an anger with no direction, rebel without a cause.
Exactly.
And they're watching people like us. We're inspiring them, they say, But inspiring them to do what? Because they're not doing anything. Otherwise, I shouldn't have to have Spacebusters. I shouldn't have to make these movies. Other people should be. There should be so many that I don't need to make one. You know what I mean? And I keep telling people a lot. I'm like, well, you know, you're not gonna be able to eat and drink the daily news when the food shortages come. So maybe you should be planting a garden instead of watching 10 videos a day. Maybe you should watch one video over your coffee and one at night if you like that, and, you know, get your information, but go do something, you know, and they don't. I'm kind of wondering if the powers that be know this, that a lot of their opposition would be rebel archetypes. And so they supply them with the daily. It's like the Orwell's 2 minutes of hate. Remember in like 1984, they have the 2 minutes of hate where they put the enemy on TV and just yell, or Huxley's Brave New World, where they just bombard you with so much shit that you can't possibly get angry about anything because it's just it's just a blob of stuff. What do you think about that?
Well, it's so interesting because when the pandemic hit in 2020, 5 minutes after I got back from Anarchapulco that year, the first year that I spoke, I saw two major archetypes come forward in that pandemic. And it was, not surprising, the child and the rebel. So you saw the child where they started, like cartooning the virus, so to speak. Maybe should we speak in code, by the way, to protect your channel?
Well, I will put this on YouTube, but I think you could say that. But let's call it the boogeyman.
The boogeyman. That's it. I usually say the boogeyman. And so they were scaring, a lot of people went into that, oh, boogeyman coming. Okay, I'll put my feet on these stickers. Like all of a sudden we had stickers everywhere. There couldn't be anything more child than that. And then the go home kind of thing, that's how you speak to a child when you need to, just put a stop to it to save them from danger. And how many of them just went home and they were in their pajamas for weeks and months eating bonbons and watching YouTube or whatever, right? They just acted like children. They dropped all their responsibility. So many people in Canada ended up taking something called CERB. Well, guess what? 20, 25 months later, they called in all of that CERB and considered a debt now. So those children accepted all that money. I know people in that situation right now, and it's thousands and thousands of dollars. They all thought, oh, free money, yay. Like a child would think, like there's nothing free. If it's free, then you're the product, right? That's one of the things. But the controllers also knew there was going to be at least a percentage of us that were more rebel oriented, who would want to fight, who would say no, who would stand up and show up in rallies and get together. Like, I had so many more gatherings during the lockdowns than I ever did before. Actually, like it was just, okay, we're doing this and risking everything. But they were ready for the rebel, very much ready for the rebel, and knew how to siphon off that anger. Right. So if you don't find a way, because it's not about siphoning, it's about constructively putting it to work and making something real and tangible that's going to create needed change in the world. That's what the Rebels' real project is. And so they were able to hijack and, the head to head and police showing up at the rallies and, Antifa showing up at the rallies and throwing dildos at the crowd and then blaming it on the freedom fighters that we were all a bunch of sickos. And, so it gives the rebel a constant target, but it ties you up all day, every day. And you're going to stay in that state of, anger that really is a form of fear. Rebels don't realize they think they're not afraid, but it's rooted in fear, not as an emotion, but a program. And so in a way, the rebels were just as stuck as the children. And they knew it.
That was kind of weird too, because exactly as you're saying, if you remember during all that time, there was also Antifa, BLM, remember riots, George Floyd. So they did keep giving you these other boogeymen to kind of deflect your anger. They're like, well, yeah, but look, you should really look at this. So you weren't really like, you didn't really know where to put your attention. And speaking of the children, like in England, they had people out banging on their pots and pans for the NHS. Like that's what a 3-year-old does in the kitchen when you're cooking. You're like, shut that racket up.
I know.
Don't sit and bang spoons on pots and pans like That's literally little children and monkeys. So yeah, it's interesting what you say. It seems to me that they know this, what you're talking about, and they were prepared for it.
Yeah, our controllers have known about archetypes from the time immemorial. Was it Edward Bernays back in the advertising days? They knew that, if they wanted to get a message out en masse, and that was the new breakthrough at that point, mass marketing, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have all of these channels that you can get messages out so quickly. So by studying the psychology of not the average human being, but every human being really, and seeing how they could park with their messages inside your psyche, they could actually take up house in there and say, with the warrior archetype, how you can have Nike in your head because they took that real estate and they claimed it and they gave it a check mark or whatever that thing is. And you think of shoes or you think of whatever, and like, just do it. All of this kind of stuff ends up hijacking your own inner archetypal world. And that can be used both for good, but for nefarious purposes as well. So yeah, they knew it, that we are totally susceptible to being controlled at the level of archetypes.
You see that a ton in advertising too. Like you'll see it's a commercial, but there's it's a minute, but you don't even know what's the product. You're just like, just like these yuppies driving around drinking coffee, and you're like, oh, it must be a coffee commercial. Then at the end, it's a bank, and you're like, what is it? What did driving a Prius have to do with a bank and drinking coffee by the river? So I think they are doing what you're saying. They're targeting certain archetypes for certain products. They're like, these are the people. They definitely know about this. And I think a lot of that, they target a lot of your shadow side, your insecurity, especially with women and makeup. You're never skinny enough. You're never good enough. You're not this enough. Women, unfortunately, I think it's getting better, actually. I think because I know a lot more women who don't care anymore. They don't give a shit like they used to fall for it. A lot of men didn't really fall for that kind of thing. They do fall for other kinds of advertising, but they're not, so they don't care, Right. But do you see it getting better? Have you done any work on like advertising versus the archetypes?
Well, I was born and raised in advertising, marketing, and communication firm. So that was, now we didn't use that to my awareness, but I wasn't necessarily behind the scenes with a creative director in every single meeting. So it wasn't something that we were using on purpose, but any artist worth their weight is working through archetypes, even if they have no idea they're doing it. Like my photographer that I've worked with year in and year out for a long time already, she just has a sense of it as an artist and can speak through it. And you can even give her just like the tiniest little taste of what you want to get across. And she'll put it all together in a really amazing way. And it is communicated and people get that. So it is a natural way for us. We are always expressing through archetypes, just that you might not know it. And the more self-aware you are, the more you've actually got to know yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses, the more clearly you're going to express them through those.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was really, again, I saw a lot of the dark sides of the rebel archetype in my past. Without knowing your work or book, for some reason, I just naturally started getting over them, by doing something about it. But actually, like during the lockdowns, that's a good example. I think I made like 14 films. Wow. During those 3 months. Not all long, I had a couple big long ones, but some were 5 minutes, some were 20. But I just thought, okay, you bastards, if you want to, I thought they were going to do us again this year. I was almost certain we were going to get locked down. And I thought, go ahead and do it, man. You're just going to give me the time to unleash another 20 films on your ass, exposing you, So like, I did sit around in my pajamas drinking wine, but I was actually putting out content and doing radio interviews and things. I was using it productively. And, that's what a lot of people, I understand the people who took those checks that you're talking about, because some needed to, like financially, they were screwed. Yeah. But if you took it and you had money in the bank and didn't, there were also a lot of people, if you remember, they didn't want to go back to work again because they were getting more money on those benefit checks than they were after tax when you could go back to work. So there were quite a lot of jobs open because people were just sitting around getting money for nothing, as you say, but there is no such thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is a task of the rebel is to find out how you could be valued. To me, I'm on a soapbox because in the self-employed life, you are much less controllable. Right. I noticed how nobody showed up on my doorstep to tell me what to do or where to stand or what to put in my body. Nobody. And that was like the worst level of tyranny that we have seen in my whole entire life. Now they could amp it up and they could end up, there in fact was an exercise in Canada where the military went door to door. I don't know if you saw this. They went door to door practicing as if it was another pandemic like this. And so that's a little freaky that they are planning to be like that. But
it's common disease X. Yeah, they're going to bring it again. They're just waiting. They know our memories are short. So they're waiting their little 2-year, 3-year break and they'll get us again. But I don't know. I don't know what you think is going to happen. I think a lot more people are onto it now. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing that happened. They gambled pulling these big cards because they knew it was going to take a bunch of those that are stuck in the child archetype and it's going to graduate them to the rebel. And so when you have that totally different balance where you got a lot more rebels and a lot less children who just simply take the medicine and don't question it, then you're going to end up with a much more unruly situation. And personally, I don't think they can make it work again. The cat is out of the bag, right? We were at the store the other day and we're talking to the guy. And I, of course, as a rebel, I have to throw in the word pandemic as he's talking. And then you see like his little wink in his eye. And he goes, do you want to hear about my lawsuit? He's saying, and I'm like, yeah, I want to hear about your lawsuit. And it turns out he's going up against a huge employer. Was it Shaw or Rogers? And they have totally racist hiring practices. And they have a scale of like, if you're a Nigerian, you get this much. And if you're East Indian, you get this much. And so he was able to discover all that. And he got pushed out. Filipino was the other one because he's Filipino. He got pushed out because he was a guy, not a like girl or not a gay Filipino or whatever they needed him to be. And so then he's filing a lawsuit against them. And he went real rebel style with no lawyer, meaning that he's not being drained financially for every single motion that's being made. And he's really going for it. So I'm going to have him on for my show as well. But yeah, I don't think they banked on, I think they did know that this was going to wake up a substantial amount of people, which is why they went so intense and so heavy and, resorted to all kinds of public shaming here in Canada. We were shamed every single day on the news. We were called out. They had a phone line people could call to report us when we weren't doing right things. Like it was off the charts. And I don't know, I just think enough people went like, huh? And even, a good friend of mine who at the beginning, he was telling me like, shut up, Beth, you're making no sense. And I never want to talk to you again. And then 6 months later, he's going like, those injections don't make any sense, he says to me. And I'm like, yes, that's right. They make no sense. So I don't know. I think we've got that. We might have turned a corner over the hump. This doesn't mean they're not going to try things. I think it's more climate-demic is going to come, but I don't think they can make the disease thing work anymore.
I don't know. And I think, that's the thing. A lot of people were sitting around in their pajamas drinking wine, but they thought they'd be watching Netflix. But they weren't. They were watching stuff like our kind of people are putting out, and the tons. You know what I mean? I had one movie had 1 million views early on. Like I hadn't had a video with more than 7,000 views before that. And I was like, oh no, here we go. So people were watching, and yeah, I'm with you. Again, they have teams of think tanks and experts and Committee of 300. They were watching how that was managed, so they will be prepared what to do different next time. And I think one of the things will be to get rid of us rebel archetypes. They're going to it's going to be us rebels who are going to be the focus of this, of whatever the counter psyop will be if they try it again. But I'm with you. I think a lot of the children did wake up, which is great. Yeah. The cat's out of the bag, So what do people do? Like, let's say they read your book. I'll hold it up. And they get it at your website, right? Or where else? Are you selling it anywhere else besides bethmartens.com?
Yeah, it's at Amazon too, but I would love if you buy it through me, even though Amazon prints it. I'll just, a full disclosure. So you're still going to get a package from Amazon, but it's just way better for me in that context, since I'm totally independent in this respect. And
They also take too much money. We sell on Amazon too, which is great.
Oh, good. I did.
They get a large chunk of our book, but they also print it. So, Amazon's the devil, but you don't have to cough up money to pre-print 20,000 books or whatever. So there is that, which is, it's right now it's the lesser of two evils, but I agree. Just get it from you personally, and they can get coaching too, is right. So like, let's say you read this book and you go, let's say you're a person who's more stuck in that dark side. Not like me. I've been trying to move out. What if you go, yeah, that's me. My life has fallen apart. What can you do with them, or what do they do about it?
So they know they have a problem because they're seeing all the signs and the symptoms of it. It'll show up in their work, in their health, in their relationships, in their finances, and also their relationship with God, or whatever word you like for that one. And so they know that already, but they don't know the source of it. And so if you try to go to work in your life and solve every little problem that you have, you're going to spend the whole life doing that. And the shadow still has gravity on you. It will still pull, because you're meant to be awake that way. And so as I mentioned, you can go to my website. You can sign up for what I call an Awaken Your Journey Archetype session with me in 30 minutes. You can see the problems that you're having in life, the obstacles, first of all, to prioritize them. What are the biggest losses of energy for you that create the most trouble in your life, so that you can work on something where you're, when you have more trouble with it, more consequences, then you can get further ahead faster. I'm a fan of speed and efficiency personally. And then just look at, I always want to see, can I actually help somebody? Because I can't help everybody. I'm not here for everybody. I'm here for a certain kind of person. And if you are really lost in the shadows, in especially victim shadows, we didn't talk about those archetypes, but those more primal archetypes that are in the back door of every single journey archetype as well. If you're lost in your victim and you're like prostituting yourself and you've no desire to change that, and you're just like a bug laying on your back, then chances are it won't work for us to work together. But I'll get to know you in that conversation. We can have a chat and see where it ends up, see what your vision is for yourself. And then if it looks like a fit, I can recommend either a course or coaching. Often people combine a course with coaching so they can use the material, go through the exercises, hear all of the audios, and then get specific help on the areas that they're suffering in. And what I notice is that people are often able to take what seems like a lot of problems, narrow it down to one archetype. And then all they have to do is work on that archetype and let the problems rest for a time, because they often don't get better. Do you notice that? Like sometimes when you try and you try and you try, you're like, oh, I was better off doing nothing. I had less problems when I did nothing about them. And this is not doing nothing at all. This is just taking full responsibility for it. And I was going to say, do you want to quickly talk about the gifts of the rebel as well? We didn't. Totally.
Yeah, I would love to. That kind of reminded. Yeah, I think before we do, and I think we should. Those darker primal ones that you're talking about. Everything is energy. We're energetic beings. We live in an energetic realm. And you're right. What this is about is you only have so much energy, and if you're wasting it on worry or fear or what happened yesterday or might today, or another one of those control dramas that I was talking about earlier for the energy vampires, is called the aloof. It's called poor me. They're getting energy by making you feel sorry. Oh, poor me. Nothing can happen. That's why you can't work with them, because you're up here and they're down there, and you're like, I'm not giving you that. You know what I mean? You're here to suck me dry. I'm not. No. I'm here if you want to come up. And so many people love to play the victim. It's a great way to get attention, especially in this day and age. And I like what you said. There was a funny video with this guy. He does an Indian accent. He's like, if you're having he's talking like a guru, but he's making jokes. He says, if you're having a terrible day, fuck it. Go home, go to sleep. It's already fucked up. You are a fuck up. He's like, don't worry about how you fucked up yesterday. You can always look forward to tomorrow's fuck ups.
There you go.
And he nailed it. Yeah. So let's talk about the positive sides. I'll open up to the page. of the rebels.
Right. Yeah. So taking up the righteous fight, that means the one that's actually aligned to you, that you care about, right? That it's because we got a lot of issues, a lot of different places to put our time and energy. So you have to see what's your hill to die on. What is your place that you're going to plant a flag and dig in and make a difference and make changes in that way. Actually being an agent for positive and needed change. You see where change is needed, and you're willing to put some time and energy into that. Also, very much leadership. Rebels make fantastic leaders. It could be for like a movement of some kind, very common in our rebel arena here in the truth world, and being able to speak things when you know people won't like it.
Yeah.
That's a gift. Because everybody's biting their tongue and swallowing and suppressing their words and walking around burning inside with all of these heavy things. And you also have to learn, of course, how not to just barf on people and unleash your anger. That is never a good thing. But to speak the truth and just say it and live in it and be able to withstand disapproval. Now, here's a little bit of a shadow from it, is that rebels learn to like disapproval. It's like a louche for them. So they will actively piss people off so that they could get that disapproval. And it's kind of like a fake power. Children do it all the time. They do bad things because they can't get any recognition for good things. Being able to take down structures that are either obsolete or even harmful. They know how to take healthy risks. This is, again, a lot of people shaking in their boots. The child won't do that. And they're like, oh, what if something bad happens? Or what if they don't like me? Or what if it doesn't work? Or what if I'm not successful? And the rebel is going, you know what? It's worth a try because it's for a good and worthy cause. And they're going to, because a risk is a risk for a reason. You don't know what's going to be on the other side of that. As we talked about, sticking with it for the long run. That's
a weird one, because that's another one of the shadows, though, is like you kind of quit. You get like you can stick with it for the long run throughout, but in each individual project, you do get a little bored, right? Like, I know what you're saying, like you finish your book and you're like, I don't want to finish this book. But in the long run, you're going to keep doing this. Like you have a passion, right, to keep going. Is that what you mean?
Right. Keep going is my hashtag I always forget to use, but in my mind, it's my hashtag. Keep going. No matter where you are, keep going. Because most people actually, as soon as they hit their biggest shadows, they're going to think, oh, this is impossible. I can't get through. There's no way to, pass go and collect $200 or whatever that is. And so you can just know that when you're hitting your biggest problems ever and you feel like it's impossible and impassable, that's when you're about to have a breakthrough. So
I like, and it says, you say, sticking with it for the long run, you say, even after the excitement wears off, which is very important, right?
It really is. That's why rebels like the risk, and that's good. But when you don't have that adrenaline and that dopamine and that newness and shiny object syndrome anymore, then yeah, the tendency is to just walk away and even forget and look for, oh, there's something new and exciting. And it's funny how I can see I'm just about finished my audiobook and I have this much to do. And then what do? Oh, I'm searching for people to interview, and I'm like, trying to get some energy and feel high and happy. So it's reminding me to go back to that. And then here's the big gift. The biggest gift of all of the rebel is valuing the cause of your own emotional and spiritual freedom, to treat that like a cause. Because if you find freedom inside yourself, which is the most hard wiring of all the wiring at all, then you become a beacon for that. You become a magnet for that. People will follow your leadership because they read freedom on you. And unfortunately, people will also follow anger and fear, as we know with, all of the porn out there. It's very popular. But I would rather be less popular with people who genuinely are seeking freedom and could use me as some kind of conduit, like you said. So, if they want to rise, I really, honestly, and this is not just humility speaking, none of us are higher than anybody, despite all our journeying and experience. Do you notice how, for example, people can come along and say, we're seeing it all the time. Young people that graduate themselves through what took me, my whole entire life to see. And they can do it so quickly because resources and films and everything that you've put out and lots of people put out. And all of a sudden they're there where it took you 50 years. And then they can only, grow from there. So we want that. We want people to be able to stand on our shoulders and get high, so to speak. But the real purpose of getting high is so you can get off the archetype map and go for real freedom through the experiences that are, both self-generated and come in as the order of the universe or natural world, however you want to say that. I don't like the word universe anymore.
the realm, we'll call it the realm.
Right.
I mean, one of the troubles I have, and I wonder if you see this in archetypes, you say that we make a good leader and everything. I get to the point where I don't want to be anyone's leader. I'm so trying to be not a leader or not part of any of that crap anymore that I realize I am, and I inspire people and they write me and I get it. But I'm not trying to, and I'm wondering maybe that's who makes the best leaders are the ones who don't want to be. Because look at the ones like politicians. The people who want to lead are usually dirtbags, So, what do you think about that? We make good leaders, but do you think we don't want to be, or do you think we do want to be leaders as rebels?
Yeah, it should be a genuine calling, and you're very right that most people interpret their calling as something they don't want to do. It's like God saying, go get out in front and talk to people and speak your truth. And you're like, nah, I don't feel like it. I don't want to. I don't, I'm maybe not you, but I'm afraid. What are they going to do? They put Jesus on a cross. What are they going to do to me? And,
you're like rebelling against that. The last thing you want to do is go start a new kind of that. You know what I mean? So there's a weird little dichotomy there, or oxymoron in a way.
Exactly. The other thing I was going to say is that's the shadow of the king, is to seek power for its own sake and be completely disconnected to where power comes from in its source, so that you always have something to humble you and to check, like, balance and check and see what are your motives. That's the whole thing to me, is that once you see your motives, where you're actually coming from, and there are many layers of motives that we're not aware of. So it can be quite surprising. I know I'm surprised every day, tell you the truth, what I find underneath the surface. And so, yeah, that's the king's big downfall, that they're going to get lost and drunk on power. And then, yeah, so it does seem to be more graceful for those that didn't want that power, but they received it anyway. They had the calling and they, obeyed, or they, what's the word? We don't like that word. Rebels don't like obey. Cooperated.
Go along with or cooperate. Yeah. I'm the same. I tell people, I don't want to be sitting here making all these movies and doing all these talks and stuff. It's fun. It's actually, my life's been great since it happened. I don't want to do this. I'm only doing it because I have to. I feel like I've got kids, and I have me too. I'm only 53 almost, and I have my kids. I'm not leaving them a world like this. And maybe I'll live another 20 or 30 or 40 years, probably more like 20, but who knows? I don't want to live in it either. So I'm only doing it because someone has to do it. And I think that's what you mean. That's leading because there's a calling and you're like, fuck, man, somebody's got to do it and no one's doing it. They're not enough. So you have to have the courage to step up and do it, whether you like it or not. I don't like it. I like making movies, but I'd rather be making movies about fun, weird crap. I don't want to be making them about the establishment and pharmaceutical. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's your warrior talking, by the way. That's a healthy, strong warrior just going like, yeah, I prefer someone else did this job, but somehow it's on my plate and nobody else is doing it. And this is the kicker too, is that don't think that it's redundant ever for anyone listening out there. Like, oh, Steve's already doing it or Beth's already doing it. It's not like that. That if you come forward and speak your truth, it's going to be through your unique lived experience and purpose. And there will be people that are literally waiting for you to speak in your way. And so there's, never going to be too many. It doesn't mean everybody needs to take leadership, but I think we actually all are called to take leadership in some way. Just like with a group of children that I notice of different ages, is they naturally start to lead each other. The 10-year-old leads the 5-year-old and the 5-year-old leads the 3-year-old. So they're trading that leadership role.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we could sit here for hours and do this, but I want you to be able to sell some books too, so we can give the whole plot away here, people. Oh, by the way, never do that. It closes your electric circuit.
Oh, really?
That's why the Catholic Church had you pray like this, because it shuts down your entire electric circuit from the ground connection.
Oh, you just killed my emojis.
Kaba, hands up in the air.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Put them up.
There you go. What about this with the fingers?
That's different. These are mudras, but this one is bad. That's
okay.
No.
All right. Okay. I'm cured.
Keep them up to the sky, antennas.
There you go. I'm cured.
But yes, there's anything you want to add? I'll hold the book up again. And your website is Beth Martens with an S at the end.com.
Mm-hmm.
The book is called Journey. I can highly recommend it. And I don't use right now. I'm reading Steve Young's book. It's great. It's amazing. Nice. 5 others, but yeah, I can. This is one of the books I can highly recommend. I'll be opening it again. And to me, it was a real eye opener. I was like, oh, that's me. Oh, I see that. So yeah, thanks for sending it to me and talking. It's great. Anything else? I'll let you close. What are we missing that's really important?
Yeah, just that it is a book that I tend to read a book and I almost never revisit it. Almost never. Like, I'm a move forward rebel kind of person. I want something new. And, but I have had incredible feedback from people saying, and very consistent feedback saying they return to it over and over and over again. One of the reasons is that you think, when you just read about an archetype or you hear about an archetype and you take in the information, but the divide between that intellect and the felt lived experience can be huge, enormous. And so you keep on learning about yourself. You keep on seeing what you didn't see. Sometimes I literally have to go to an archetype because I'm lost in the shadow of an archetype. And I can't even imagine the gift of it in that point. And I'm the one teaching this stuff, right? So it's just how it works. The conscious and the unconscious, it's a humbling place to work. And yeah, so this book you could probably make use of over time for potentially a lifetime.
I think, like I said earlier, too, it's nice that it's mapped out in orders. So let's say you do start working on this stuff, and then all of a sudden you start saying, well, I don't resonate with that anymore. Maybe I'm moving into another one. Now now what? You know what I mean? So now you can go look again and say, all right, I'm starting to deal with this. I feel like that. I feel like I find myself halfway between the warrior and the rebel. I feel like I don't have, it's not that, I don't want to say that. No, I'm not going to say that right. I'll say it wrong. It's like I don't have much more to learn from the dark sides of it. I've overcome most of it. And it does feel like I need to go somewhere, like I'm ready to move. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then don't be surprised if you recycle some shadows. People, I'll just say that if you feel like, oh, that thing came back, I didn't see that for a long time, but it is because you're meeting it at a higher energy or higher frequency place. And it can be harder to recognize in the higher frequency place. It's not necessarily creating problems in your life, but energetically you're still dealing with it and still losing energy to it. But it should never stop you from just moving on the hero's journey, because you create momentum and you create action in your life. And it's action that will bring your shadows up, which is what you want. You want the shadows to come up. We're not trying to avoid them. It's exactly the opposite. That if you see the shadow, you have seen freedom. You just have to know exactly how to make that so. It's not just an intellectual idea of it. It is an actual thing. I did this work to save my life from cancer, and I'm super committed to showing other people how to do that as well.
That's great too, because there's a lot, in the new age community, there's a lot of these light workers and don't look at the negative. And you're like, no. Don't stress over the negative, but you have to address it. Like you can't just, it's not like see no evil here. It's not just like solipsism. It's not happening in my reality. It's like, well, you might not acknowledge it is, but it is happening, and you're going to get stung in the ass if you don't do something about it. It's gonna get you.
Exactly.
Later, yeah. Which it did to you. Yeah, you got it. It stung you in the ass.
Then it's like snakes and ladders, and it just sends you down into the shadow of the child in denial, and lose some ground that way for sure.
Yeah, totally awesome. Well, Beth, it's been great to talk. I think we should keep this short and cut it unless you have more to say, because the shorter it is, the more views we're going to get. And I would really love people to read your book and discover this, because this is very empowering information. Know thyself. And this is one of the best tools I've seen to do such a thing. So I think it's a great work. You are a fuck up. Don't worry about being a fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Don't worry about being a fuck up today, because you can be a fuck up tomorrow.
You can always look forward to tomorrow's fuck ups.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it's been fantastic. I absolutely love talking to you. I love meeting you in person and just seeing your cheerful face every single morning. For a week.
I'm not cheerful in the morning on my end. You don't want to. That's why we do these at night. You don't want to talk to me in the morning. I don't know what archetype I am, but I'm the dickhead.
There you go. Yeah, that can be rebel too, for sure.
That's me. If I haven't had my coffee yet, I'm like, yeah, don't even talk to me.
Yeah.
We were laughing on Facebook because good morning is a spell, right? When you say to someone good morning, it's morning, like you're more like death. Morning. Right. So people were saying, well, what do you say? You know, and Andy was saying, oh, buenos dias, hola. And I said, what I say in the morning is, what do you want? Why are you calling me this early?
There you go. No good mornings from you.
No, like, don't call me. I'll call you.
Right.